Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today, we're going to be taking a look at and testing out the all-new XPG Xenia 15G gaming notebook. Now, this is the 2024 model, and with this, we've got an upgraded CPU, powerful GPU. Overall, been really enjoying using this for the last few days here, and it's handled absolutely everything that I've thrown at it. Now, like I mentioned, this is the brand new model with that upgraded CPU. We've now got the Intel Core i7-14700HX, and this gives us 20 cores, 28 threads, and a boost up to 5.5 gigahertz. Graphics for the new XPG 15G are handled by an Nvidia GeForce RTX 4070 with 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM. And given the name 15G, this designates the screen size. We've got a 15.6-inch IPS display at 1080p up to 144 Hz. Now, again, it's only 1080p. Some people might be looking for 1440p or even higher 4K with a 15-inch laptop. But personally, I kind of like the fact that they only went with the 1080p IPS, because while I'm on the go, 1080p on a 15.6-inch IPS display looks great. I'm going to get the maximum performance out of this RTX 4070. And then when it's time to take that resolution up, I can always plug this into my larger monitor or television. One thing I wanted to point out right off the bat is this is really a storage king. You can upgrade this thing to 24 gigabytes of storage because we've actually got 3 M.2 2280 slots in here. They are PCIe 4, so in total we can add up to 24 terabytes of storage to this 15-inch laptop, and most other laptops in this form factor have one NVMe slot, maybe two. But with this, we've got 3 2280 PCIe 4.0 drives that we can add. Taking a look at the cooling system, I think they've done an amazing job here. 3-fan design, heat pipe city. This thing is going to stay nice and chilly even at those higher TDPs and TGPs for the graphics card. And since this is an XPG laptop, this is actually packed with a 1TB ADATA Legend 850 NVMe SSD and dual channel ADATA RAM. This just happens to have 16 gigs, so we've got two 8 gig sticks here running at 5600 megatransfers per second. When it comes to I/O on the 15G, over here on the left-hand side, we've got a full-size USB 3.2 port, and of course, we've got a 3.5mm headphone jack here. Over on the right-hand side, another full-size 3.2, plus we've got USB Type-C. This is also 3.2. And around back, we've got our Ethernet port, full-size HDMI. This is 2.1. We've also got our power input and another USB-C 3.2 port. Keyboard and trackpad actually feel really nice. It is RGB backlit, single zone. From software, we can actually change it to any color we'd like across the board, and we will take a look at their control center. We'll get a bit closer in just a little while, but I definitely wanted to give you a rundown on the specs here because this thing is packing some power. And that's because the new XPG Xenia 15G is powered by the Intel Core i7-14700HX. I've really been wanting to test this out because with this, we get 20 cores, 28 threads, 8 performance cores up to 5.5 gigahertz, and 12 efficiency cores up to 3.9. As for RAM, we can go up to 64 gigabytes of DDR5 at 5600 megatransfers per second. We've got that Nvidia GeForce RTX 4070 laptop variant with 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM, and this is the 105 watt version. But remember, you can pick the 15G up with the 4080 if you wanted to. 3 PCIe 4.0 NVMe slots. We can add up to 24 terabytes of storage. A 15.6-inch 144 Hz IPS display at 1080p. Intel Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, a 53.35 watt-hour battery, and this is running Windows 11 out of the box. So I've had a few days to spend with 15G. Do like the trackpad, kind of wish it was a bit larger. There's a little more room here. And when it comes to the keyboard, really love the feel of this thing. Now it is single zone RGB backlit, so we can just change it to a single color. It's not multi-zone like some other higher end laptops out there. But personally, when it comes to my laptops that I like to use, I just need a little bit of light there because at night, hard to see that keyboard. It's totally fine with the way this is set up. Again, this has been able to handle everything that I've thrown at it. I've been running lots of benchmarks, testing out AAA gaming, and I'm very happy with the performance this thing's putting out with that RTX 4070 and of course that i7-14700HX. 20 cores, 28 threads might sound a little overkill for a laptop, but it sure does come in handy. And we can control every aspect of this laptop with the XPG Control Center. Wanted to move in a bit closer to give you a look at everything. As you can see, we've got that brand new Intel Core i7-14700HX, definitely one that I've been wanting to test, given that we have 20 cores and 28 threads here in a mobile CPU. This variant of the laptop was configured with 16 gigabytes of DDR5 at 5600 megatransfers per second, running in dual channel. And of course, we've got the Nvidia RTX 4070 laptop variant. And so far, this laptop has been working really well. First thing I wanted to show you here was the XPG Control Center. This allows us to customize basically everything on these laptops. Straight off the bat, we've got our system performance. Quiet mode is going to disable that discrete RTX 4070, and we'll just be using the integrated graphics with that 14700HX. Entertainment mode gives us a little more, and basically what this does is up the TDP on the CPU and the clocks on the GPU. And of course, we've got our performance mode. This is where we want to be when we game, and I'll tell you, this thing is putting out some amazing performance. Fan speed control, you can fully customize the curves here. We've also got a maximum setting and automatic. Full RGB light control for the keyboard, so we can adjust it directly from here. Brightness control, and we've also got those hotkeys on the keyboard itself, so if you didn't want to go into the control center, you can always do it from there. We can set up a keyboard and a mouse macro directly from the control center. And of course, we've got our battery settings. So I've got this set to maximum battery charge, or you could just go to recommended, and while this is plugged in, that battery's only going to charge to 70%. This will extend the lifespan of the battery, but of course, since it's only going to go up to 80 watts here, you're not going to get maximum charge, but it's really up to you. Now, for all of my testing, I do want to mention that I am in performance mode here, and I'm going to be plugged into the wall. Obviously, for that RTX 4070, we want as much power as we can get out of it, and the first thing I did was run some benchmarks. And this 14700HX isn't a joke. When it comes to Geekbench 6, single core 2739, multi 15908. I mean, we're reaching desktop status here with these newer chips. It's pretty amazing. I also ran Cinebench R23, and we got a total multi-core score of 25,919. Again, desktop status, like I just mentioned with Geekbench. It's pretty awesome what these new mobile chips are doing. Moving over to some GPU benchmarks with 3D Mark, Firestrike with a really strong 29,329. And since we've got an RTX card here, I figured I'd run the Port Royal test, 7,378. And the final one I ran was Time Spy with a really impressive 12,704. Graphics score, 12,218, and our CPU score was 16,407. Just judging by the synthetics, we're not going to have any issues with AAA gaming on this machine, and that's the next thing I want to jump right into. So with a lot of these tests, I don't want to enable any DLSS. If you need a higher frame rate, it's totally up to you. You can throw DLSS on, and in some cases, you can double your frame rate. But since we're working with a 1080p display here in the 15G, I figured we'd keep it right there with no resolution scale. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 using the built-in benchmark. Extreme settings, no scaling, 1080p. We had an average of 103 FPS. Again, adding some DLSS, even just setting it to quality, that'll bring you up to an average of around 132 FPS. I've personally been having a lot of fun with Helldivers 2 on PC, so I figured I'd go ahead and throw it in. Ultra settings, so we're maxed out here at 1080, no resolution scale. We got an average of 86 FPS. This thing is doing a great job, and if you take a look at Afterburner, you can see exactly what's going on here. From the GPU, we're pulling an average of 80 watts. From that CPU, the 14700HX, up to around 90 watts. Now again, we're in performance mode, and we're also plugged into wall power. And yeah, I mean, it is definitely hammering through Helldivers 2 here. Next up, we've got Ratchet & Clank, A Rift in Time, 1080p, very high settings, no DLSS, but one thing I did add here was Nvidia frame generation. I personally do like it for some of these games. Without it, we're seeing an average of around 80, but with it enabled, we're seeing averages of around 119 FPS. It's a pretty decent jump, and it doesn't affect quality whatsoever. I always like to throw at least one fighting game in, so we went with Mortal Kombat 1, 1080p, maxed out settings. I'm not sure if it's known as ultra high with this game or very high. I kind of forget. There's a lot of settings here. But no frame generation, no DLSS. We're running at 60, and with fighting games, you're not going to have an issue with any of them on the market right now. Maxed out settings. And the final game I wanted to test here was Cyberpunk 2077, 1080p, Ultra, no DLSS. With this game, we've got access to basically all of Nvidia's new technologies, and like I mentioned with Ratchet and Clank, one of my favorites is frame generation. So at 1080 Ultra, no DLSS, we're seeing averages of around 181 FPS here. What I'm going to do is just turn on frame generation. This is going to take it way up. This creates frames for us. Now we're seeing averages of around 132 FPS. That's definitely a nice little jump, and we don't have to worry about degrading the quality of the game itself because we didn't use any kind of scaling. But of course, if you want more, and you will need more if you want to plug this into, let's say, a 4K or 1440p display, we've got DLSS that we can access. 1080p, Ultra, DLSS, I'm going to set it to quality, and we're also going to keep frame generation on. With it set up like this, we can now get an average of around 150 FPS, a little over 150. So we've got those nice little jumps there, but if you didn't want any kind of frame generation or resolution scaling, you don't even need it at 1080p. So overall, I think the new 2024 XPG Xenia 15G is a great performing laptop. One thing I wish we had here was just a bigger trackpad. I do like the keyboard, and some people might not be too keen just having a 1080p display when 1440p and 4K are becoming normal on these laptops, but I really do like the idea. We've actually got all the performance we need for 1080p gaming here, and when it's time to up that resolution, we can always plug this in to a larger display. I've kind of been looking at the 15G as a gaming workhorse. It doesn't need all of those bells and whistles if you love the games you're playing, and this thing will play them just fine. But that's going to wrap it up for this first look video. I will have at least one more coming up. I want to keep this for a couple weeks and then I'll just do a full review on it. Got a lot more that I want to test on it, and if there's anything else you want to see running on the XPG Xenia 15G, let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in learning a little more about this laptop or maybe even picking one up, I'll leave some links in the description. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.